All right, guys, happy Monday. Today we are going to take a look at lesson 2-1, which is solving one-step equations. A lot of you are going to probably remember how to do this, but it's such a very important foundation in algebra. I want to make sure that everybody is really comfortable doing this before we move on to more complicated things. And so one of the first things we're going to take a look at is the addition and subtraction properties of equality. And so basically that says that in an equation, if we add a number to one side of the equation, we have to add the number to the other side. Subtraction is just the opposite. If we subtract a number from one side, then we have to subtract it from the other side. Now again, to me, it always makes more sense when I actually do a problem, so let's try that. All right, this is, before we get to the problem, I forgot about my good old golden rule of algebra. Now, the golden rule of algebra tells me that I need to do unto one side of the equation what you do unto the other side. So when you have your equal signs, if you're going to add something to one side, you have to add it to the other side, and so on and so forth. We always are going to move things with what we call inverse operations. So inverses, we talked a little bit about this last week with reciprocals. Inverses are usually opposites. So one of the things that it's showing on this page is that the opposite of adding is subtracting, the opposite of subtracting is adding, the opposite of multiplying is dividing, and then the opposite of division is multiplication. So let's go ahead and try our first problem. So this problem is x plus 13. It wants me to solve it. That means I need to get x all by itself over here. I can see, guys, that what this is showing me is a plus 13. So I need to do the opposite or the inverse of plus 13. It's showing a minus 13 on the left-hand side of the equation and a minus 13 on the right-hand side. Remember, if you do it to one side, you have to do it to the other. Positive 13 and negative 13, those are opposites. They get canceled out. My x comes down, and then we're actually just doing 27 minus 13, so we get x equals 14. That's my solution. What this is showing you at the very end is that, guys, we can always check our answer if we plug it back into the original equation. So in the original equation, where we have x plus 13 equals 27, they replaced x with 14, and so we have 14 plus 13 equals 27, and that is correct. Let's try this one together. So it says, what is the solution of y plus 2 equals negative 6? So my job is to get y all by itself over here. That means I need to move this plus 2. So in my mind, I'm thinking, what's the opposite of plus 2? So the opposite of plus 2 is minus 2. I'm going to do a minus 2 on each side of this equation. Positive 2 and negative 2 cancels out. Y comes down, there's my equal sign, and on the right hand side of this, guys, I'm just combining negative 6 and negative 2, so that gives me a negative 8. That's going to be my solution. Now over here, it's asking me to check my answer. So in order to check my answer, I'm going to go back to the original equation, y plus 2 equals negative 6. Where I see y, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to plug in negative 8. So it's going to be negative 8 plus 2 equals negative 6. Negative 8 plus 2, that's negative 6. So I get negative 6 equals negative 6. That's true, so that means that my solution of y equals negative 8 is good to go. It's correct. All right, we're going to move to problem 2. This time we have to subtract to find our answer. So my first problem is already worked out for me. I need to solve it for b. So in order to get b alone, we have to move negative 3. The opposite of negative 3 is positive 3. But remember, if you do it to one side, we have to do it to the other side. Negative 3 and positive 3 cancel out. B comes down. In my calculator, or you can calculate this in your head, negative 7 positive 3 gets you negative 4. So negative 4 is the solution, and what they're showing down here is that we can check it. If you go back into that original equation, where you see that b, they're plugging in negative 4. Negative 4 minus 3, that gets you negative 7. So negative 7 equals negative 7. That means that we are correct. Let's take a look at a couple of these down below. We've got m minus 8 equals 14. So to get m by itself, I have to move negative 8. Opposite of negative 8 is positive 8. If you notice, class, I'm doing that on both sides of my equation. So I'll bring down that m, and I have negative 14 and positive 8 on the right. That gets me negative 6. Let's take a look at the other one. Over here, I need to get y by itself. So I have to move negative 3 halves. Opposite of negative 3 halves is going to be positive 3 halves. On the right, negative 3 halves and positive 3 halves will cancel out. So my y just comes down. And on the left-hand side, I'm adding 1 half plus 3 halves. That gets me 4 halves. I was lucky because these had a common denominator, so I just added the numbers in the numerator. And guys, we can simplify that. 4 over 2 is just going to end up being plain old 2. So 2 would be my answer. If you can simplify, then we always would want to simplify. All right, now since I'm not in class with you today, we are not going to be doing extra practice, but I will be assigning you some practice, so hang tight for that. Let's take a look at the last two properties for today, which are going to be the multiplication and division properties of equality. Okay, so very similar to our properties that we have in addition and subtraction. All this page is telling me is that, hey, if you multiply something to one side of the equation, you need to multiply it to the other side. If you divide something on one side, we need to divide it on the other side. Remember our golden rule. What you do to one side, you must do to the other side. So now we're going to practice, guys. Let's take a look at problem 3. It says, what is the solution of 4x equals 6.4? Well, guys, remember, 4 and x are put together by multiplication. I'm trying to get x alone. So I'm thinking of that inverse operation. The opposite of multiply by 4 would be to divide by 4. So they divide both sides by 4. The 4's cancel out. Matching pairs on the top and the bottom go away. And then the last thing that we would do is we would actually do this in the calculator. So in your calculator, you could go ahead and do 6.4 divided by 4, and you get x equals 1.6. We'll practice a couple more. So if we take a look here at part A, I have 10 equals 15x. Again, the 15 and the x, they're put together by multiplication. So if I think of the inverse operation, it'd be division. So now I'm going to divide each side by 15. So matching pairs top and bottom go away. I get x equals 10 over 15, or we can simplify that. So remember, if you can simplify, then we want to. I can really, what I'm thinking in my mind is dividing both of those by 5. So, and actually, to not confuse anybody, I'm going to change the way I wrote that. I'm going to write that as we're going to divide both by 5. So it'll end up giving me 2 over 3. All right, so we're going to take a look at another one. So let's come over here to part B. Part B, we've got negative 3.2z equals 14. Remember, this is multiplied together. So to get z by itself, I'm going to divide each side by 3.2, or negative 3.2, sorry. Now, negative 3.2 divided by negative 3.2, that cancels out. So z comes down all by itself. And then for this part, guys, we're going to use a calculator. Since it's already giving me a decimal, it's okay to go ahead and plug that into the calculator. So let's take a look. We've got 14 divided by 3.2. That comes out to be 4.375. All right, now we're going to try to solve some where we have to use multiplication. So this one's already done. We're just going to take a look. So we've got x over 4 equals 9. Well, this is x divided by 4. So the opposite of dividing is multiplying by 4. If you notice, they did that on both sides. What ends up happening is 4 at the bottom and 4 at the top cancel out. So you get x equals, and on the right-hand side, we're just multiplying negative 9 times 4 to get negative 36. So that's my solution. Okay, take a look at a couple down here. Our first one, we've got r divided by 3. Well, the opposite of divided by 3 is going to be times 3. I'm doing that to both sides of my equation. On the right-hand side, what's going to happen is the 3's are going to cancel out, so r will be alone. And then it's just 3 times 19, which is 57. Let's take a look at one more. Over here, I've got x divided by negative 9. So the opposite of divided by negative 9 is going to be times negative 9. We'll do that on both sides. So what's going to happen is on the left-hand side, my negative 9's cancel out. X comes down, and I'm doing 8 times negative 9. That's negative 72. All right, guys, last problem. We are going to solve an equation with reciprocals, or you know what I like to say, refliprocals. So let's take a look. It says, what is the solution of 4/5 m equals 28? Now, we're trying to get this m alone, and I know that what's in front of it, or the coefficient, is 4 over 5. So anytime we use that word coefficient, we're talking about the number in front of a variable. Guys, whenever that number in front of the variable is a fraction, like 4/5, the quickest and easiest way we get rid of it, and I'm just moving down here, is we multiply both sides by the reciprocal or the refliprocal. I'm multiplying by 5 over 4. Reciprocals cancel out. So my m comes down, and then over here to do this, I usually just kind of do my work off to the side. It's 5 over 4 times 28. Remember, we can always think of that 28 like 28 over 1. And then we just multiply straight across. So again, guys, I'm going to use my calculator, and I'm going to do 5 times 28. That gives me 140. 4 times 1 is 4. And then if we divide that, 140 divided by 4, it comes out to be 35, which we can see, class, that's what they're showing right here. So sometimes you have to kind of do a little bit of work on these. Let's take a look at one last one. We've got 12 equals 3/4 x. So I'm trying to get the x alone. I can see that my coefficient, the number in front, is a fraction. And so when that happens, I'm going to multiply each side by the reciprocal, by the refliprocal. So reciprocals cancel out. X comes down all by itself, which is good. Now I got to do this work. I've got to do 4 over 3 times 12. There's nothing wrong with just going to the side of your problem, maybe in like a margin or on some scratch paper to work it out. So I'm writing 4 over 3 times 12 over 1. Remember, we're allowed to do that. We're going to multiply straight across. So 4 times 12 is 48. 3 times 1 is 3. In class, if you do 48 divided by 3 in your calculator, it comes out to be 16. So in this, 4/3 times 12 is 16. My solution is x equals 13. All right, so we are done. What I'm going to have you guys do today, it is a nice long block day, is IXL J3 to 80%. What I would like for you guys to do is to submit this before you leave, because this, you have plenty of time, block day. As a heads up, on Wednesday, because that's the next time I'll see you, that's the next block day, we will review the Chapter 1 summative. That's what you guys took on Friday. And if you wanted to retake it, that's going to be on Friday in class. So on Wednesday, I'll talk to you guys all about corrections and all that good stuff. All right, have a great day. Email me with any questions.